More than 700 students and university staff who were displaced by Hurricane Irma have moved 4,000 miles to Preston to continue their studies, days after being airlifted from their devastated Caribbean island. The students arrived in the Lancashire town last week after being evacuated from Dutch St. Martin, which was largely destroyed when Irma struck last month. Almost all of the students had to shelter for a week in the island's American University of the Caribbean School of Medicine when it found itself in the eye of the Category 5 storm that killed 124 people when it swept across the Caribbean and Florida. The students, who were eventually evacuated by the U.S. Air Force, will continue their studies at the University of Central Lancashire, Auckland, after flying across the Atlantic via Puerto Rico and Chicago. The huge logistical feat was organized in just 9 days, according to the Auckland Vice President, Prof. Mike Thomas, and came about because of the AUK's links with East Lancashire Hospital's NHS Trust, where it sends students on work placements each year. The students and staff will live in student accommodation and return to St. Martin between January and July next year. Prof. Joan Crean, the university's Pro-Vice-Chancellor for Clinical Studies, said many of the students had arrived in Preston with their families and the few possessions they could salvage. He said our head of student services, Lisa Banks, found herself being pulled on the trouser leg, and this little 4-year-old boy looked up and said, "Is Preston a very windy place?" She said, "Not really. Why, what's the problem?" And he said, "The wind at home blew all my teddy bears away." Obviously this struck at the heartstrings and we went out and bought him some teddy bears. He was overwhelmed and delighted. Nathaniel Minai, 25, one of the displaced students, said he and 700 others spent 6 days sheltering in AUK's hurricane-proof building, turning it into a makeshift hospital and treating victims of the 185 miles per hour 298 kph storm. "I don't use the term crisis lightly. It was devastation at the highest level," Minai said. "As much as we prepared for the hurricane, we hadn't seen anything on this scale before, and as soon as we saw the destruction we knew straight away that we wouldn't be able to go back to campus. We've all been through a lot, and we're looking forward to settling into life at Auckland and continuing our studies." Fellow student Ricardo Baranin, 30, said some of the students and their families were traumatized by the disaster, and that it could take years for the island to recover. "It's going to be a very long process for them. A lot of these places, the businesses and the residences of locals, these are all people we know. Their lives are going to be really in upheaval for months to years even," he said. "It's been a long process getting us off the island. That was the biggest concern, to make sure everyone was safe. Then the next step was getting us back into school. We're in the business of making doctors. We want to be doctors." The island of St. Martin was devastated by Hurricane Irma's 185 miles per hour winds. Photograph Jose Jimenez Jetty Images. Minai, who is from Florida, said people had been warm and welcoming since he arrived in Preston, but that the weather, blustery and typically damp on Monday, was a little different to St. Martin's sunny average of 30°C since Irma. "We were at home in St. Martin because the weather is about what it is in Florida. When we got here it was, oh no, we need coats." Sana Iqbal, president of Auckland Students' Union, helped the displaced students and staff settle in with welcome packs including essentials like duvets and a pack of biscuits with aveu. On Friday, she said, her team cooked curry and rice for the 700 new arrivals, a traditional welcome to the Northwest. "It's been a really difficult time for these guys and we hope they've passed the hard bit. But right now it's a new chapter in everyone's lives and there's loads of good stuff coming up. I am proud we've been able to help." The new arrivals will use Auckland's medical school on evenings and weekends to avoid disrupting the timetables of the university's students. Thomas said, "We've taken the whole medical school, 650 students and 30-odd staff, and just lifted them lock, stock, and barrel into Preston. When people say Britain's slow at responding to world events and crises, this was done in 9 days." The government, Borders Agency, the regulatory bodies have been really supportive. "This situation is our chance to offer help to people whose lives have been turned upside down through a natural disaster,"